Hey guys, welcome to Temeza's Tips, Tricks, and Tutorials. This is the third video in my background controller tutorial series. Last time we went over VelSet. This time I'll be going over another controller that can put stage items in motion, VelAdd. The VelAdd controller will add a set amount of velocity to a stage item. Of course, if you add an amount of velocity in the opposite value of a velocity already set on the stage item, you can slow it down or even change its direction. But you can already slow things down or change the direction with VelSet. So generally speaking, VelAdd is mostly useful when set in a loop to accelerate a stage item to a desired speed, instead of it just suddenly jumping to its velocity. In my first tutorial, I mentioned how time equals has three parameters: start time, end time, and loop time. For almost everything you would want to do with other controllers, you only need a start time. The best use for end time and loop time is when doing addition. Let's start by showing what we'll be aiming for. Here are our stage item examples. In order to make the speeds easier to see, I tiled the animations. The stage item on top is moving at a velocity of 2. The bottom one has no velocity. What we're going to do is gradually speed up the bottom one till it reaches the same velocity as the top animation. I've already assigned an ID number to the stage item we're going to accelerate. ID equals 31 represents third tutorial, first part. And I've put in the definition for the controller. Control ID equals 31 to match the ID on the stage item for the controller to work. Now let's put in the VelAdd. Type equals VelAdd. Time equals 121 is the start time. 320 is the end time. And -1 is the loop time. When using both a start time and an end time, the controller you are using activates once for every single tick of time in between the start time and the end time. So in our example here, the velocity will be added 200 times. Remember, something ending in 0 is still a game tick. So I set the start time to 121 and the end time to 320, which is 200 activations exactly. Had I made it 120, 320, that'd be 201 activations, and the speed would not match. I have the loop time set to -1. This is setting it to never loop. Having a value here will make this controller ignore any global loop time under the control def, like this one. Now, if you want the VelAdd to be part of the global loop, don't put anything after your end time, not even a comma. And remember, don't put just a 0 for your loop time either, because that will make it so the controller never activates at all. 0 is still a tick count, so the controller will be looping before the action ever gets to occur. X equals 0.01 is 1/100th of x equals 1. Since we want to reach a velocity of 2, we need those 200 activations of the VelAdd. You control your final velocity with your value in x, or y for vertical velocity, multiplied by the number of ticks between your start time and your end time. If you want a faster acceleration, you'd use less ticks and a higher x or y value. A slower acceleration would use more ticks and a lower x or y value. Now let's see it work in game. As you can see, it starts off as stationary for a couple seconds, then begins to move, slowly at first, accelerating until it reaches a velocity of 2, and then stops accelerating. Both of the stage items end up with the same speed. Let's look at how to apply loops in VelAdd using the loop time parameter of time equals. One thing to remember is to always have the loop time be at least 1 tick more than your end time. If you set the loop time to the same number as your end time, or less, you won't get every activation of the controller, because a loop will begin before the last activation takes place. Once the loop begins, the timer is reset for this control only. So this loop time parameter is best used when you want the controller it is assigned to working independently from other controls that you have under your control def. Looping this control will add the speed over and over. I'll set the loop time to be 321 because, again, it needs to be at least one tick higher than the end time. If you want more time between accelerations, use a higher loop time. Now let's look at that in game. Again, it starts off as stationary, speeds up, matches the velocity of the top one. Now the loop began, and now it's accelerating again. Reaches the velocity, starts the loop again, and now it keeps adding more velocity over and over, and keeps speeding up. You can also use VelAdd to slow something down gradually, even to a stop. Here's an example of that. We'll put another VelAdd controller under the control def. Now, since we know we're going to end up with a velocity of 2 after this control ends, we're going to use the same basic values as last time, but make the velocity negative 0.01. Time equals 621, 820 is 200 activations of the control again, and negative 0.01 times 200 is negative 2. So that will end up giving us a value of 0 for the x velocity once the control finishes. Now I'm going to set this first control to not loop again. And let's look at this one work in game. At the beginning it's stationary, then speeds up, matches the velocity of the top animation. Now the loop, it's going to go to the second control, start to slow down, and now it stops. Now let's look at how to apply loops in VelAdd using the global loop time. I'm going to have the movement start, then slow down to the stop, and then loop the whole process over again. Now we have to remember to take out these negative ones in our loop times because those will keep it from looping. Also remember that your loop time, even the global one, needs to be at least one tick more than your final time of your activations. So since this one's end time is 820, and that's the final activation that's adding this velocity, I'm going to make the loop time be 821. Now let's see it work in game. Starts off as stationary. There's the startup. There's the speed match. Now there's the slowdown. Now it's stopped again. Now the loop has begun as soon as it stops. Now it begins to speed up again, matches the speed of the top one, and so on and so forth. There is a bit more that I want to cover on VelAdd, so be sure to check out the next video for another use of this controller.